It's draft time again, 2023, and we're still in 2022. But that's the fun part of it. And boy, I had some up and downs over the past few weeks, actually, the past few days as a Jet fan, because as I introduced Dave Syvertsen from our lads, Dave, as soon as the Jets lost, I was already starting to think about, well, I think it's now maybe we're getting the time to start thinking about the draft for the Jets. And then a couple of days later, after Sunday's games, I was like, well, wait a second. Screw the draft. Let's get into the playoffs. So
this is what you want. Yeah. You want meaningful football at the end, right around Christmas time, and you're getting it. The arrow's pointing up. I know there's a big black cloud over the quarterback position right now in terms of what you're going to be doing, who's going to be there next year. It'll be fun to talk about, but in the offseason. But I think right now, fans, if your team's still in it, that's your focus.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. You know what? Ride Mike White. That's fine. Has nothing to do. What the media people handle the whole Zach Wilson, because it doesn't mean anything. Just let them talk about it. Let's get Mike White into the postseason, because unless Mike White leads us to a Super Bowl, it's not going to matter. The offseason is going to change everything. And look, I really do believe this 100%, especially the more than I think about it. I really do believe that if Zach Wilson is still going to be the guy, which I believe, that they're going to work hard on getting him going. They're either going to hire a big-time, long-time quarterback guru for quarterback coach, because they had Knapp. Knapp passes away, and everybody forgot about that. That he was the old quarterback coach that was going to be the guy when LaFleur, who had no experience, he was going to be the go-between. He was going to help Zach. LaFleur couldn't help Zach too much. And then he died out of nowhere. Yeah. And they didn't replace it. They replaced it with 33-year-old Rob Calabrese, who still could be playing football in the NFL. Right. So everybody forgets that. And that's why I think that they're going to have to look seriously in the mirror about his personal relationship with LaFleur and say, if they don't hire a quarterback guru, then it's time to hire a new offensive coordinator that has a lot of experience and that wants the total control and says, yes, I can get the best out of Zach Wilson.
Yeah, there will be a lot of fascinating storylines to follow this upcoming offseason, just like we saw last year. And there are moves that can be labeled as sometimes the best ones you don't make will be the best moves, right? I mean, the Broncos and Browns right now, to me, look like they're kicking themselves for shipping away future picks and devoting a ton of guaranteed money to these quarterbacks. So it's almost like you want to cross that option off the list. And what are you left with? And there's a lot of teams in that situation right now. I said this last year. I'll say it again right now. You might have a dozen teams looking for a new quarterback this upcoming offseason. It's gonna increase the value of who is out there, and it's gonna really force decision makers into being disciplined about not overspending and not overreaching yourself, and have to get creative with some of these solutions. I think the Jets are gonna be a really fun team to watch.
And by the way, Baker Mayfield, you would have to believe that he landed in the perfect spot. Because as a backup, even if he's a backup for a whole year, if he's able to, I can't see any reason why they wouldn't bring him back. That maybe he's the guy. Maybe he's the guy that could take over. Because I said this a week ago with the Jets and the whole Jacksonville deal. I said, okay, who's going to tell me that if Doug Peterson was teaching Zach Wilson how to play, and LaFleur was teaching Trevor Lawrence how to play, you tell me it's going to look the same? Come on.
Right.
Please.
Yeah, no. Situations matter.
So this might be the best thing. This has to be the best thing for Baker Mayfield to have McVay as his tutor.
100%. Yeah, I agree. And whether that means Stafford is retiring or not, I know there's a couple rumors floating around out there. I do think he'll be back, but I think Baker Mayfield, he's been around enough that he's probably better suited staying there as a backup, even if it's all of next season.
No one's going to give him a starting job. That's for sure.
Right. If it's going to set his future up for the back half of his career.
And then Ritter, he still has now another couple of games to prove whether or not Atlanta feels comfortable on being a starting quarterback next season. I don't know. I don't know. Right now, what would you think? Guess.
It's too early. I mean, but
You
again,
want to see a couple more games?
In respect to your question, yes, I think that where they got him in the draft, what his skill set is. I don't think Ritter will be the kind of quarterback that prevents Atlanta from making another move if someone becomes available, whether that's via trade, whether that's free agency, whether that's in the draft. I don't think the team will be making many plans around him. So the yes or no answer to me is he has not shown enough, and I don't think he will show enough to say, hey, he's our starter going into 2023, no question. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting because they got a boatload of cash. They've got
They
some
do.
draft capital. So,
Yep.
yeah, that's and then
I will say this. The last thing I'll say there, if there's a team that you had to project Lamar Jackson to get traded
there you go.
because I think that is a possible move, a franchise
Yes.
sign and trade. It's Atlanta, and with an outside shot at Detroit. I think one of those two teams could be the team where Lamar ends up.
Yeah, Kevin Knight from Falcoholic.com, who covers the Falcons. We had that discussion. I don't know where it came. I think he basically brought it up. I don't remember why. Maybe it was because I was asking him this very question about the future of quarterback and so forth. And this was about 3 months ago, 4 months ago. So he was way on. He was already looking towards the potential Lamar Jackson being available. So now it's becoming actually a potential thing that could be the landing spot. So yeah, that's very possible because Lamar Jackson and that Raven offense is not going to be in good shape heading into the postseason with their wide receiver issues. So anyway, lots to talk about there. Mark Lawrence and I will talk more about what's going on our show on Thursday. And then we will have a playoff preview show with Ryan Dunleavy from the New York Post and Mark Lawrence. So still a lot to talk about. And we have our playoff college football preview shows available. We have Ohio State, we have Michigan, and we also have one lined up for the championship game next week. It's already here, Dave. The championship game will be next week, a week from, what is it, Monday? Actually, 11 days?
It's usually a Monday night. Yeah. It's usually the Monday night, the first Monday night where there's not an NFL game on.
So that's it's here. It's here, playoffs, and we'll be back recording our final bowl guide reports on Friday, and that'll be for the playoffs as well as a few of the games that are taking place before and after the playoffs. Because there's a game early that day on Saturday. Before the Michigan game, and then you got some of those other games like the Tulane game and the Utah game. What was it? The Rose Bowl and what's the other one? Penn State, Utah. That's a pretty big game. No, that's the Rose. That's the Rose Bowl. Tulane and USC is Fiesta, I believe.
Yeah,
I think that's what that is.
I believe you're right. Yeah, it's actually, you know what? I think Fiesta
is the playoff game.
Michigan game. Yeah. Here we go. You have the Sugar Bowl.
The Sugar Bowl is
that day.
Oh, the Cotton Bowl is Tulane USC.
Right, Cotton Bowl. There you go. That's another classic. Yeah. Yep.
So that's so anyway, we'll get into all of that on Friday, but we still have a bunch of bowl games to cover. We're recording this on Tuesday, the 27th. Are we on the 27th, right? Yep, 27th of December. I tell you what, driving around out there, it's like a holiday. It's very weird. I don't know if it's because Christmas landed on a Sunday, that everybody just has decided that they're going to take like a 2-week vacation.
Yeah.
And everybody, it's like everywhere you go, like even like networks and the way they handle it, it's like a lot of the people have taken vacations or all special shows. It's just very weird.
Yeah.
Whole week off.
It's a bizarre time of year. I've always said I work in the gym industry, and this week between Christmas and New Year's is always just uncomfortable. It's just so out of your norm. I think that's another reason why you look forward to the new year. You kind of get back into that routine.
Back to the routine. Yep.
Yeah. You hate so much, but you kind of miss it once it's done.
Yeah, that's true. Well, if you work hard like we do and you love it, then because I know there are a lot of people that are going, what are you, crazy? I can't wait to get back to work in my routine. All right, let's start first of all with the Pinstripe Bowl, which is going to be in a couple of days. And that is Syracuse and Minnesota. Syracuse, they did lose their coordinator. I guess he's not even coaching the game. I haven't heard, but I'm assuming he's not because he's gone. He's somewhere else, or he's moving on somewhere else. And that's a big deal for them. And then Tucker opts out. That's a big deal because he's their entire offense, really the big part of their offense, I should say. The top guy for Syracuse, though, is the linebacker, Michael Jones. You have him going around the 5th or 6th round?
Yeah, definitely a day three guy, probably Eric towards the back half of day three. He plays big. He's a physical, quick dude. He gets under the blockers. Even watching some of the NFL games this past weekend, a lot of these run defenses have issues with their inside linebackers getting to their points quickly enough, and you're never going to have an issue with that with Jones. I do wish, with considering his athletic ability, I wish he was a little bit better in coverage. Just being a good athlete doesn't make you good in coverage, especially for a linebacker. There needs to be a feel and good footwork and anticipation. That's one thing that is a little bit of a kind of a black eye on his resume right now on his scouting report. He did hurt his foot at the end of the year. I have heard he's been traveling with the team and at practice. I don't know if he is practicing. So he's going to be a game time decision from my perspective anyway. I'm not sure if he's going to play. I do want to see him play in this game just because of there are some scouts that are going to say he's not physical enough. I don't see that. I think he's more than physical enough, but he can prove that in this game against the Minnesota power rushing attack.
That's true. Good point.
If he goes out there and does what he's done all year against this kind of offensive attack, I think you erase that from the question mark part of his scouting report and just understand that you're probably not going to get a nickel and dime linebacker here. It's probably a 2-down run defender.
And I would say, from watching their games this year, to me, it looks like Arande Gadsden, the wide receiver, who actually looks like he could play tight end, but he looks like the next guy. Would I be wrong in saying that?
No. I mean, you're talking. I think he had over 16 yards per catch, a bunch of touchdowns. Obviously needs to get bigger. We all know that. He does look like a wide receiver more than a tight end right now. But when you're talking about tight ends that break into the top 20, top 15, top 10, it's all about the receiving skill set. Kyle Pitts being an example, right? I mean, there was debate, was he a receiver or a tight end based on where he lined up. And, I'm not going to put Gadsden in that tier yet. But when you look at the tools, you look at the upside, and now you're looking at a lot of quality tape and production. Sure, he could definitely be that next guy.
Yeah, because I remember, I forget it was a game early on in the season, and it was like, and obviously he's got the genes, and I was I remember Rondé, and I could have sworn it's the same name, so I'm surprised he doesn't use Junior. Maybe he does. I have no idea. I think it's the same exact name.
Arande Gadsden the second.
It is. Yeah. Okay, so it's the second? Yep. Okay. So, yeah, and I was like, yeah, but because I hadn't really seen anything from him up until that point. And I saw some of these big catches he made, and it was probably, let me see what game. It was probably the Purdue game, because that was like a crazy game. Yeah, now I'm looking at it, my notes here. He had the game winner with 7 seconds left. That was the game.
6 for 112, 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you want to know about Gadsden's film, check that. I think that was his coming out party, and he really hasn't looked back. Okay, but anyway, that's for next year. Right. Let's get back to what we've got going on for this year, and that includes. We can kind of move on now to Minnesota, and of course you got the ticker on the screen, so you can follow that along. It's got the number of the player, the jersey number, the position, the team, the bowl game, the dates, and so forth, and in parentheses what rounds, or if it's a free agent, priority free agent, that Dave believes the players are going to end up at. And we start for Minnesota with Mo Ibrahim, and if anybody in the college football bowl system this season, with the NFL draft on the horizon, could have sat out, and maybe he will. I haven't heard anything.
Nope.
Nobody would have looked at it and said, "Oh man, what's wrong with you? Why can't you play in the bowl game?" They would have said, "Yes, good for you. Rest up," because this guy's had a ton of injury issues over his career. But maybe this just shows you even more about what you're dealing with, because this is a kid that is going to be if he could keep healthy, he is going to be a big part in the NFL for any team. And I think the injury issues are the only reason why he's probably going to get drafted a round or two lower.
Yeah. You're talking about multiple lower body injuries. That's always a red flag. And there are teams that will probably cross him off the list for that reason. And, whether you agree with that or not, that is the case. There will be teams that say, hey, we can find other running backs that don't have this injury issue. The medicals will be big for him, what shows up on his reports. But if you're only talking about the running back himself, he's one of my favorite backs. He has what I call teach tape. When you are looking for certain factors, certain attributes in a running back and the skill set, not just the tools, he does everything right. He does everything that you are trying to teach young backs to do when it comes to vision, pressing the hole, staying low on contact, bouncing off tackles, ripping through, getting plenty of yards after contact. Also contributes as a blocker. Maybe not the best blocker out there, but the effort and the desire is there. Guy has averaged 3.5 yards after contact this year. It's been there his entire career. And we're talking about 5 years of tape now where you're just getting confirmation after confirmation that this he's a dude. He was a 1,000-yard rusher in 2018, 2020, 2022. The years he did not reach that mark were the injury years, right? You know what you're getting out of him, and he's great at protecting the football. Those are.
Oh, by the way, speaking of protecting the football, so
Yeah.
You watched the Iowa game, right? Did you get a chance to watch that game? The one that was for the Big Ten West title, basically.
The Minnesota Iowa game, right? Yes,
and
right. Yep.
They were like at the 5-yard line, and there were like 7 minutes to go in the game, 5 minutes to go. They couldn't throw the ball against Iowa, and you knew the only way they could run it was with Ibrahim. And you're like, well, they got to throw the ball, don't they? Well, no. They just kept handing the ball off to him, and it was like he must have had about 8 carries on the drive, and it went from like the 5 all the way to like the 20. And then it was almost like, so then he fumbled, and it was almost like, well, of course he fumbled. You didn't do anything else. I mean, the guy's probably worn out. So you can give him a fumble in that situation because, come on. I mean, the guy could have had a heart attack if he kept handing the ball off to him.
Yeah, 39 carry. I mean, he had a stretch of games this year, Greg. He had 30. This is in consecutive weeks. 30, 36, 32, 36, 39 carries.
That's crazy.
And no one's ever going to have to do that in the NFL unless your name is Derrick Henry and it's snowing outside, right? Like you're never going to have to do something like that. No one's going to ask him to do that. But
not with, especially with his health situation, they're not going to do that.
And his body type, it's different running the NFL, but just the fact that he did it, the fact that he can just get back up and do his job, this is the kind of back that I want. If I have a number 1 back, right, and then I have a pass catcher, a short yardage guy, I want the number 4 guy to be the more complete. Hey, if my number 1 guy gets hurt, he can step into that role right away.
Great point.
That's where I want him to start off right away, and then you see what he develops into.
Yeah, I mean, because that's again, from my perspective as a Jet fan, I know that's not how the Jets are going to think, but when you lose someone like Breece Hall, it just shows you. Now, I don't know what would happen if Elijah Tucker was still there. Maybe the running backs would look a little bit better, and the running game would a little bit. But it's like, hey, you know what? If a guy like that's there and he's in the 4th round, say, and even though it's considered a luxury, do it. Because look what happens if you lose a guy like Breece Hall. That's just a big drop-off. It's so evident this year of the drop-off between Breece Hall and, say, Michael Carter or even Bam Knight. If you can get a guy like that to be your number 2, and who knows? Like you said, even though he might be a number 2, eventually, if he gets the opportunity to be a number 1, he might just take it and not give it away.
Yep, I agree.
All right, John Michael Schmitz at center. Now, you have going about the 4th or 5th round. Do you consider Schmitz to be the best center in this class?
It's going to be close. I have 3 or 4 guys right now that I have them all grouped kind of right together. If I had to pick one today at the draft list this weekend, he'd be at the top of the stack. It's not a great group. I don't really see any day 2 picks out of any of them. I do think 1 or 2 of them probably will sneak into that into that 3rd round. But what I like about him is, other than the intangibles, just very smart, All-American. He's a leader. That's a huge part of playing center is the mental capacity to make the line calls. And it's almost like you're the second quarterback of the offense. He's got the power. You know that there are some movement issues I see. He's on the ground way too often when he has to go left to right and deal with double moves and quality pass rushers. But at the very least, he's going to be able to anchor. And you see powerful D tackles that are not good pass rushers from a skill set perspective impacting a lot of passing games in the NFL right now just because they are so much more powerful than these centers. And these defensive schemes are so complex now that they can manufacture one-on-one matchups for a lot of centers can't handle that. Schmitz is going to be able to handle that kind of power right away. 6'3", 315, plays with a squatty type build, really good flexion at the knees and ankles. It helps him win that leverage battle. And his good tape when he's on, right, when he's not falling off balance, he looks like a very high quality starting center in the NFL. So if there's one guy that I think I had to put at the top of the stack today, and one guy that I think could move into maybe even the second round, it's this kid.
All right, so even though Schmitz might last until the third or fourth round, fifth round, how many centers that are coming out of this draft do you think can eventually start?
My number right now is 4.
Okay. And that makes it interesting because, instead of going, well, I'm not going to be able to get the dude from Iowa because he's a first-round guy. Instead, when you have guys that could go anywhere from the second to the fifth round, it gives teams a little bit more flexibility. Like, hey, you know what? If I need a center, I don't have to worry about, maybe going a little bit too early because sometimes that could be dangerous, especially at center. And we talked about this on our last show, that there are starting caliber centers in the NFL that have gone drafted in the 6th round, the 7th round. They've been free agents coming into the league. So that's why I asked you how many, even though they may not get drafted till the 3rd or 4th round, doesn't mean that there won't be starting caliber centers available.
Yep.
All right. Tight end, Spanford. Now, Spanford leads the team in receptions. So is he a guy that can do both? Because you would think a Minnesota tight end needs to know how to block. And if he led the team in receptions, which I know says a lot more about the lack of wide receiver production or talent on the team, is this a sleeper?
It's a sleeper. He's the kid that if I was still working with East-West Shrine, I'd be all over him trying to get him to one of these all-star games and put him in that pro environment. But the Minnesota offense, unlike many other offenses in college right now, it's a pro style offense where, he blocks as much as he runs routes and catches the ball. 6'7", 256, long arms, big hands, big wingspan. He's got the NFL body. Does it always translate into dominant level blocking? No, I think he tries harder as a receiver than he does a blocker.
Why 6th or 7th round then?
I don't think he's going to be fast enough. I don't think he's the kind of tight end that's going to be able to separate from coverage. So he's going to be one of these backup tight ends initially in his career while they work on some of the refinement to his blocking, but will be able to contribute as, when a team goes with 2 tight ends, 3 tight ends, even, which a lot of teams are doing now, that 13 personnel. He's the one that comes on the field and now probably gives you a little extra edge against a defensive back in coverage because of how well he can body these guys out. But when you're talking about every down capabilities, he won't be there early on.
A couple other players that you have projected potentially as 7th rounders, if not priority free agents, are in the defensive backfield, Terrell Smith and Jordan Howden. Now let's move on to the Oklahoma-Florida State matchup. And this was a matchup that would have been a lot more exciting in the regular season, the Cheez-It Bowl. But here you have Florida State really turned things around, which is great to see. You really need to see. I think it's great for college football when to get Miami and Florida State going again.
I agree.
They don't have to be top 5. I don't want to see any of that stuff again because they were too dominant.
Yeah,
but just
too much.
Competitive. Top 10. Top 15, even top 20 I'll take, but capable, because now all you have to be is a top 15 team to make playoffs possibly, which I think is great in a couple of years. All right, let's start with Oklahoma. Unfortunately, as you can see on the ticker, 4 players opting out. The top guy, the top name might be Eric Gray. Gray did not have. Would Gray be considered again? I know because he's a skill position player, it pops out a little bit more. But which of those four players, Morris, Redmond, Harrison, and Gray, has the top upside?
It would be Eric Gray or Anton Harrison. We talked about Harrison already. He's got a lot of traits that he just has a few skill set things, especially with his hands to clean up, which in my opinion, that's a lot easier to fix in the NFL than the footwork. If he does fix the hands, he's got NFL left tackle starting potential. So because of that, the value is probably a little bit higher than Gray, who, the dime a dozen running back, right? But I like Gray. Gray's an NFL back. He reminds me a lot of Corey Clement when he was playing at a really high level with the Eagles. And again, never really got over the hump, in my opinion. I never really thought he got to his potential based on the situations he played in. But Gray is physical in between the tackles, has enough elusiveness in his hips to avoid tacklers, but enough power to break through them when they get their hands on. And the most underrated component to his game is excellent receiver. So just a perfect fit for what the NFL is looking for in the backfield right now.
All right, because I was going to ask you, you answered my question. His receiving ability is really what's going to separate him from some of the other guys. Okay.
Yep. And you wouldn't think it by looking at him, but if you watch his tape, you see just a natural pass catcher.
Also at offense, at skill position, you have Braden Willis, the tight end, who will be going to the Senior Bowl, and I haven't really heard much of, but the fact that he's Oklahoma's second leading receiver this year, again, might tell you something about how far Oklahoma's dropped. And then Marvin Mims, now that's a guy that we've definitely been following for a few years, but still only a 5th or 6th round grade. Oklahoma, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know Marquise Hollywood Brown has been okay. He's definitely proven himself a little bit. But they've had so much talent at the wide receiver position over the last even just 5-7 years. It just seems like, for whatever reason, those Oklahoma receivers just disappoint when you expect them to make that next step into the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that about a few programs. I'm just going to pull up all my Oklahoma receivers from the previous years, but it's hard to always get past. When you see the same uniform, you see the same system, you see the same level of production these guys don't produce in the NFL, it is hard. I try to control the bias a little bit unless you really see a scheme issue, but it's hard to get over the fact that these guys just are not. I mean, you have Sterling Shepard, who's had a solid career in the NFL, but he's been banged up a lot. So,
that's true. Yeah.
D.D. Westbrook, in my opinion, never reached his potential. He had a few flashes here and there. But I think you're right. Other than those guys, Kenny Stills, if you want to go back, I mean, that's a decade ago that we're talking. Had a solid career, has been in the league for a while. But
hey, if you're an Oklahoma fan, let us know. Let us know who we're missing.
Yeah, yep. But Mims is, I think, when you're talking about routes, quickness, suddenness, catching the ball underneath, he looks a lot like Stephon Diggs did coming out of Maryland. But the one thing he doesn't have that Diggs did, and it separated him on the grading sheet, was the downfield tracking. Okay. Mims drops way too many balls down the field, and that it's a hard sell that's just going to automatically change in the NFL.
Yeah.
And that might limit him to a slot only role at the next level. And as we've talked about a few times already, that kind of label you put on a receiver, it's going to limit the grade a little bit just because there's so many slot onlys, and you really have to have a standout trait. I'm not sure he's going to come out.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. He's better off coming back. Isn't? I mean, if he wants to transfer, fine, but maybe he should come back again.
Yeah, so I think that's what I would advise him to do, because I do think he could be a day 2 type pick if he and he's got some Jordan Addison in some of his traits. He just has to clean up some of the skill set stuff.
Okay, those are good traits. Comparisons.
Willis is an F tight end motion guy. He'll put him in the backfield. You put him in motion. Great blocker on the move. Not an inline blocker, but a great blocker. And this is why it just kind of feeds into that old school fullback that some teams still use, but they don't want to use a 53-man roster spot on an exclusive fullback anymore. But they still use them within their offense. This is what Willis is for. This is that kind of role where he's on your tight end depth chart, but he'll line up in the backfield in certain looks. And an offense like San Francisco, it would be a perfect fit for him. And great hands, soft hands. Does a lot of the little things well that a lot of teams could use on game day.
I mean, any particular reason that you realized or found out why he broke out? Was it because look, Lincoln Riley's gone. So was it
Right.
the scheme that they just settled more on the tight end position because this kid just kind of came out of nowhere?
Right. I would think it's scheme. I also think that, especially that kind of scheme like that. Lincoln Riley's scheme is he was probably one of the best offensive coaches in football. And to all of a sudden just change that, he does look like, even at USC right now, he's very wide receiver dependent in the passing game, maybe almost too much so. I mean, last year he had, leading into this year, I'm doing the math, I'm 47 targets in the passing game, career targets heading into this season.
Yeah.
He had 53 targets this year. So he more than doubled the amount of targets that he had in 2022 compared to the previous 4 years combined. So that just tells you that he's just got more looks and he took advantage of it. And I love to see that.
And look, it could also be part of the fact is that the wide receiver position in Oklahoma dried up.
Yeah,
not as talented as it's been over the last few
Right.
years, but we'll see. And again, this is just somebody that definitely was on nobody's radar before the season began, and now he's in the Senior Bowl. So good for him. All right, and then on defense, Deshaun White would be the top Sooner playing in this game at the linebacker position.
Yep, this comes up while we talk. These when we do our show on specific roles, we talk about this hybrid safety linebacker that you say, you might want for the Jets. I actually, that's who I labeled, Jamie Sherwood as when I saw him at Auburn. I said he's going to be an inside linebacker that could maybe drop back into coverage a little bit more than your traditional C.J. Mosley types. But it sounds like they're still looking for him. He plays the cheetah position for Oklahoma. That is the hybrid linebacker safety. Excellent movement traits in coverage, excellent feel. He spent more time split out in the slot than he did inside in the box this past year. So he played more safety than linebacker.
Okay.
And he still has that 225, 230-pound frame with good movement. I think he'll be a weak side guy in the NFL, or like we said, that package defender.
By the way, let that be a lesson to everybody out there regarding the difference between stats and what the coaches know because they're around these guys, and the way that the players are like an extension of the coaching staff. And I bring that up because of CJ Mosley. You mentioned Mosley. Here's a guy that has done nothing statistically as far as impact plays behind the line of scrimmage. I haven't even looked at it. I don't even have to. I mean, there's not a lot of tackles for loss, sacks, turnovers, things of that nature. Yet, Saleh loves him. The rest of the league loves him, the coaches, because they just put him in the Pro Bowl. And yes, does he make tackles? Yes, but a lot of those tackles are not impact tackles. But he is a field general. And he, again, an extension of the coach. That is a position, especially in the middle, that is so important to it kind of calms the rest of the defense down when you have that quarterback on defense. So that's sometimes, don't look at the stats so often. Again, I'm not trying to sit here and praise CJ Mosley, because I think when you're paying a guy that much, you better make plays behind the line of scrimmage. You better make impact plays. But the coaching staff, what they know on the field, what we don't know, goes a long way. And I think Mosley is a great example of that. So, all right. Let's, by the way, there's a couple other players on the team that you think are draftable. And one other guy to mention would be the guard, Chris Murray.
Yeah, just a bowling type blocker. A lot of NFL coaches inside want someone that's explosive, right? That's a trait that you can work with, because you really have to get a lot of movement in a hurry if you're going to be an inside run blocker, especially. That's what I just see that. I see that over and over in Murray's game. There are issues when he has to move laterally or he has to adjust against the pass rushers, but the explosion traits are going to be a big time thing for him. There are some length shortcomings. Allowed 9 sacks over the course of his career. That's why I kind of boosted him back a little bit towards the end of day 3. But again, I see NFL caliber run blocking ability, NFL caliber explosion traits.
Okay. Then the opponent is Florida State. And by the way, there are other players, again, on the ticker for Oklahoma. You can check them out, including a potential 7th rounder and 4 other free agent possibilities. Florida State, Jared Verse, 2nd, 3rd round edge rusher, could still come back And you would think if he's a potential second round guy this year and he comes back, well, maybe he could turn himself into a top 15 player. But it's so tempting to come out. What do you think about Verse, and where does he best fit in at the next level?
Just an awesome story. It was playing at Albany, and coaches were playing Albany. They play up a couple times per year, and when you're looking at his tape, preparing for that game, every coach that saw him play is like, who is this kid? And he almost snuck under the radar a little bit of a late bloomer as a high school recruit. And a lot of programs were coming after this kid. Florida State landed him, finishes second in the ACC with 14 and a half tackles for loss, abused some of his biggest competitions, including Matthew Bergeron, a left tackle I like from Syracuse. But I agree. And if he goes back to school next year, you're talking about someone that could be a top 15 pick in 2024. If he does come out, I think he has the frame to play in any front on the outside. I think he's got another 10 to 15 pounds on his frame just now that he's in a more sophisticated strength and conditioning program. And another year of that, I think that's where you're going to see some of that weight, that body mass that he needs. Right now, he's a 3-4 outside linebacker type. But I do think that there is long-term potential for him to put his hand in the dirt and play at the end.
Again, another reason why we love the transfer portal.
Yeah, so, I mean, transfer portal is for guys like this. They get found and they get to go play up the very next year.
Look, a couple of players on defense. You have Jamie Robinson and defensive tackle Fabian Lovett, who could be third, fourth round players, will be playing in this game. It's good to see that, in a game that's meaningless. It's good to see that all the key players for Florida State so far look like they're playing, including Robinson and Lovett.
Yeah, this will be one of the favorite games to watch just for that fact alone. I mean, Robinson and Lovett, I believe they just recently got Senior Bowl invites as well. Both pro players. You see it on the tape right away. They're both transfers too. Florida State has just crushed it in the transfer portal. Robinson reminds me a lot of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, formerly of the Saints, currently of the Eagles. I believe he's injured right now, but a true hybrid corner safety. I want to see him play a little bit stickier in coverage, but when you're talking about just pursuit speed and finishing plays and adding some attitude to the backside of your defense, that's what he brings to the table. Lovett is massive. He's going to be one of the biggest defensive linemen in the draft. 34-inch arms, 83-inch wingspan, which is enormous. And a very comfortable 309 pounds. A lot of it's beneath the waist, too. Just plays with tremendous power. I think that I don't see a ton of pass rush in his game right now, but he's got the traits to become a premier bull rusher at the next level. And we just got done talking about more and more. You see more of these guys being able to do that because a lot of the offenses are just struggling to find, anchor-friendly offensive linemen at the next level. So I still think we haven't seen the best of him. And I think the one-on-ones are going to show us a lot about who he is from a power and explosion perspective at the Senior Bowl.
All right. And then also one other player to talk about for FSU happens to be their quarterback, Jordan Travis. And I don't know. I mean, you have him as a 6th, 7th round, which sounds right. I don't expect it to be much higher than that. He may not even get drafted. Who knows? He's not that big of a player. I like he seems to come up with some really fun plays. He can make creative plays, but then he could also do things where you're just, especially at crunch time, where you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Where it just doesn't make any sense.
That's what separates him from someone like Bryce Young. Like Bryce Young is, you trust him in these big spots and he gets creative, and it's, his body type is very, atypical of what you see in the NFL, but he's got the moxie, the good decision-making, the confidence in tight situations. You don't see that in Travis. You see the creativity and the ability to create with his legs and, makes a lot of high difficulty throws. But again, the bonehead decisions that you see in on a repeated basis, that's enough to bump him down even out of the draft, in my opinion, because he doesn't have the baseline tools to, feel like, hey, I'm really going to develop this kid into a star. He doesn't have those tools. So he needs to be pretty much perfect everywhere else, and he's not. So that's where I have him at the end of day 3.
Before we move on to the next game, since we're in the ACC, I just want to note that because we had talked about Wake Forest on our last show, we weren't sure about Hartman, and he has decided to come back and he's transferring. So that's good for him.
It is. It is. I'm can't wait to see where he ends up. I would love to see him in the SEC.
No, actually, he did. He chose a school already.
Oh, I didn't see. Who did he go to?
Yeah. Let's see. Sam Hartman is going to Notre Dame.
Oh wow! I did not see. That's
Can't
great.
believe I forgot that. Yeah.
If it's not SEC, I'll take that. That's awesome.
Yes.
Good for him.
Matter of fact, that was Kyle Kelly, who does a great job covering Notre Dame. I have that penciled in to try to get him on in the next few days and talk about how excited the Irish are to get Sam Hartman. That's a type of quarterback and program that is, you would think it'd be a perfect fit to be a dangerous team next season. So
absolutely
good for him. All right, let's go next to the matchup between Texas and Washington in the Alamo Bowl. Texas seems to play well whenever they're at the Alamo Bowl, but no Bijan Robinson. So that's disappointing. I guess you could expect it. And also, we're not sure about Jalen Ford, right? We don't know if he's going to come out yet. We don't even know if he's going to the draft.
Right. I mean, he has not declared. He had such a big year. Just reading some of the, people that cover the team, they think he's going to return. But he is, if he does play, he will. You could watch him. Number 41, whether he's coming out or not, he's going to be the best player in the game. He had a huge year, 109 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 4 interceptions. You start looking at some of that production, you watch him move on tape, and you're saying, this is the guy. This is the guy that can do it all. He doesn't come off the field and makes plays left and right, up and down the field, run or pass, doesn't matter. So usually you see a guy like that, and it's an automatic he's going to be coming out. So my guess is he probably has his grade from the advisory board, and he's just waiting to announce his intentions. If he's playing in this game, my guess would be that he's coming back to school in 2024 because a lot of it looks like, a lot of these guys make groupthink type decisions. And, some of the top prospects in this game have already decided to opt out. And I would assume that Ford would be in that group if he does plan on declaring for the draft.
And we're looking at a guy whose ceiling could be what, second round?
Second round, I'd say top 45. Okay. So I'd even say the top half of the second round.
Now, there is a little bit of a drop-off, but, we still have a couple of guys that range. Actually, about 4 players that you have on the list that could go anywhere from the 5th round through the 7th round, and 3 of them are on defense. Defensive tackles Jomo and Coburn, and cornerback Deshaun Jameson.
Yeah, I mean, Ojomo and Coburn are just NFL bodies. Coburn's more of a 3-4 nose tackle type. He did improve his pass rush in 2022, so I think someone's getting him early on the progression curve there. Ojomo is a Shrine invite, versatile inside pass rusher. I see a 3-tech sub-package type, not an every down player. Maybe develop his body into an odd front defensive end, someone that's kind of playing head up on the tackle, if not outside in certain situations. He had multiple pressures in all but 2 of his games. And, hey, pass rushers – if you pass rush and you have that kind of size, and he had a really good game against Alabama, like you put some quality tape together, you're going to get drafted.
Who was it? I know one more player I want to ask you about, but I know he hasn't played a whole lot. It's a couple of years before we talk about him. But Ewers, the quarterback. Do you like Ewers as a prospect, a future prospect, a quarterback?
I do. I'd love to see him over time make some better decisions, but arm talent alone, he's top tier, and not the biggest guy. Now we're going to be fighting the injury bug with him a little bit. You got to see him put some healthy season or 2 together, but hopefully he doesn't get his job taken away from their new top flight recruit Archie Manning.
Yeah, how can those? I don't. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean,
why they did it?
Yeah,
why go there?
I mean, if Manning's going to come in, then I don't know. It's just unless Manning knows that he needs a year, because there's a lot of. If you're that good, I don't know how good Manning is, but if he's that good, you should start right away as a true freshman.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know anything about high school recruits, so I can't say I've even seen the kid play, but. So I'm probably using the name tag a little too much, but it's possible that they know that the decision's already been made. He'll redshirt. and it kind of takes the pressure and the drama away from Ewers and anything else that they have going on. But I was surprised he didn't go to Alabama. That's where I thought he was going to end up.
Well, who knows? Maybe Ewers will transfer. It's possible.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. All right. And then, by the way, also Christian Jones, you have him going, the offensive tackle, maybe as high as the 6th round.
I just love the frame. I'll be the first to tell you that he's not a very, very good pass protector right now. He's 12 sacks over his career, 3 this season, has experience at left tackle and right tackle. I've just seen enough tape, and I'm looking at the size, and I'm saying, all right, I've seen flashes. I've seen the 35-inch arms, the 83-inch wingspan. They don't make many humans that size that can move like this. Let's give him a look. That's why he's, 6th, 7th round, maybe preferred free agent type. But I've seen enough out of him that if I was making a decision for a team to, hey, let's throw a dart in the dark in the late round and see if we can get lucky on an offensive lineman, this is the kid I'd go after.
Again, this just shows you how important it is for coaching at the next level, right. Offensive line coaching and so forth. And right. If you have a good one, you can get all sorts of guys like this and mold them. I mean,
yep.
Just look at, the best one has got to be, what's his name in Cleveland? The former head coach.
Callahan.
I mean, what that guy has done over his career, especially just recently at Cleveland, it's just remarkable. I mean, how does that guy not? I mean, he has to be the highest paid offensive line coach in the NFL. I can't imagine anybody better.
I don't think there's anyone even close to him. And his former assistant, Phil Rauscher, is in Jacksonville, and I've interacted with Phil on a couple of occasions, and I've watched film with him. I've watched him coach players. I think that's a name just to keep in your memory bank. Phil Rauscher, he's with the Jags. He's their O-line coach right now, doing a pretty good job down there if you pay attention to them. And I think he'll be the next big name along the offensive line coaching staff.
Washington, the opponent for Texas. We can stay on the offensive line because for Washington, you got Kirkland. And how do you pronounce this guy's name?
Bainavalu.
Oh, that sounds good to me. And but Kirkland, this is a guy that is going to be very experienced. The only reason he did not enter last year's draft was due to injury. Otherwise, he would have been gone already. So he's got another year in college. But here's a guy that people thought a few years ago could have been a first-round draft pick.
Yep, he's been on the radar a long time, and I believe he had a Senior Bowl invite next year. Don't quote me on that. I believe that was the case prior to him pulling back out of the draft. He'll turn 25 this summer, so a little bit on the old side for a rookie. Again, I don't think it's going to matter that much. You're going to see more and more of that now because of the COVID year, and I think kids are going to be staying in school longer because of the NIL deals. But he missed a few games early in the season. That ankle surgery, it took a while for him to come back from. So medicals are going to be a part of his process, that he's got to prove that he's okay down there. But multiple years of experience inside and outside. He was nearly perfect in pass protection this year. I don't love his tape. I'll be honest about that. I don't love the way he moves. I don't love the power, but he doesn't lose. And it's the offensive line, they don't all need to look the same. There's plenty of linemen in the game right now that are quality players that it doesn't always look pretty. But at the end of the day, they stay between them and the guy that's carrying the ball.
Where do you think he should play?
It's tough. I think he's too tall for inside. So I think he's going to have to be a right tackle at the next level.
And Jeremiah Martin, he's the top defensive player you have here on the board.
Yeah, there are some very good edge defenders in this game, and 2 of them said they're coming back next year. Martin's the one that I think he's out of eligibility. Early on the curve, started playing football in 10th grade. He went to Texas A&M. He was also a big-time basketball player in high school. He transferred to Washington because he just wasn't getting on the field at A&M. Similar to what you guys have in Michael Clemens, maybe not the athletic freak that he is, but he plays a similar bully-type football, really strong with his hands, aggressive, can really wear down a blocker over the course of the game. 11 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, both led the team on a team where I just said there are some NFL dudes on that defensive line. He was the most productive one. Just the overall speed and twitch are the question marks with him. I just don't know if he's he's not the athlete that Clemens was, and Clemens was a late day 3 pick, if I remember correctly, or was he a mid-rounder?
No, Clemens was third, I believe.
Was he day?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that he's not that that's what really got Clemens put up into the draft. Just he tested really well, and I like his tape too, but I think you're talking about a similar type defender, just on a scaled back version of athletic.
Yeah, he wasn't anywhere later than a fourth, but I think it was a third. By the way, were those two players the defensive linemen you were talking about? Because I've got here, just taking a look at, because they had a couple of guys and who really hard to pronounce their names as well.
Yeah, they're both DNs. I think. Hold on, I'm just going to pull up their depth chart real quick. Yeah,
got Tupo Ola is one of them. He's the edge rusher.
He's the guy. He's the guy that I was surprised that went back, and I think the other one, his name is Bryce.
Oh, really? I know another guy is Latuli Nassin. Latuli Nassino. Latuli Nassino.
Yeah, he's not going to be a
Braylon
factor.
Trice you're talking about.
Braylon Trice is a redshirt sophomore, and then Zion Tupolo Fetu. Not even try to pronounce that name. We'll say number 58, number 8.
So which is the guy that's going to be a factor?
They're both going to be. They both went back to school.
And which one's going to be more of a factor?
Trice.
The other two you don't really think will be much of a factor. Okay.
I don't. Trice, though, I think Trice is going to be. I think he's going to be a first-round pick when he comes out.
All right. By the way, Penix will return. Good for him, because there's no reason for him to come out. There's maybe he could develop his game more where he could develop into an interesting prospect, but there's nothing about his game that says, we got to get a hold of him.
I agree. He reminds me, just because of lefty, he reminds me of Pat White a little bit. In terms of his throwing motion, maybe not the athlete Pat White was, but just that kind of like long release, but powerful arm, can put it on a rope, makes a lot of big time throws. But when you put him into an NFL system, I don't think it's going to be there. They also have, if he plays, number one, Rome Odunze, he's a sophomore. I do think he's got eligibility to come out this year. I think he's been there 3 years. He is just a dark horse name. If he does sneaky come out, I don't know if he'll play in this game, but he's a kid that you'll be talking about as a potential first rounder next year too, if he stays in.
There was a guy. I don't know what his name. I don't know what his name was. I think he was. I think he was a columnist for the New York Jets, for the New York Post for the Jets, I believe, because he wrote. It could have been Pro Football Talk. I don't know, but he goes, Jets. It's like looking forward to the draft. Jets top draft pick next year, Anthony Richardson. And I'm like, oh my God, how dumb can you be? First of all,
that's a mistake.
If you know anything about just everything that everybody's arguing about Zach Wilson, it's like, dude, what is it about Zach Wilson everybody loves? His athletic ability, his arm strength. So what the hell do you think Anthony Richardson has? The same thing. So what are you just going to go from one of those guys to another one of those guys and just play roulette? Yeah. It's just so stupid how some of these writers can be that actually get paid to put this stuff out in the market. Look, if you want to say get another quarterback in there, I'm okay. I don't even care, but I'm okay with. But to have the guy that is just all athleticism, and that's it, is like, come on, don't be stupid.
Yeah. I mean, the Jets are not. I mean, it's going to be interesting. Like I said earlier, what they're going to do at quarterback is going to be interesting to watch. I think you could go down a few different paths.
Not Anthony Richardson.
Not one of them will lead to Anthony Richardson or any early round.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think that. I don't think
they're
that
not giving up
Douglas would feel. No, I agree.
But anyway, I just brought that out because we were talking about athletic quarterbacks, and it's.
That ain't happening.
All right, let's move on. Okay, let's go to Friday's games. And we have Maryland and NC State. We'll kick it off in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. And look, you want to talk about players who, like Kirkland's another guy that you have to applaud. Like, why is he playing? You just got hurt last year, which hurt your chances of going to the draft, and now you're going to play again. Good for you. I mean, maybe he'll opt out at the last second, but Maryland, on the other hand, Demas, Jarrett, Copeland, their star trios. It's like they all got into a room together and all like, hey, let's all opt out. Because come on, I mean, how do they all opt out?
I think it's a group think. I think a lot of these programs that's what it comes down to. They just, again, not personally attacking anyone. They just don't care about the team as much as they care about maybe getting hurt in a game. And it's that's the way our society works now. It's a bunch of followers. You don't make your own independent decisions.
Well, look, that right there, and I wasn't thinking about wagering on the game, but that should maybe give you some second thoughts when the top three guys. But let's talk. But which one of those three? I think we talked about this when we were on our wide receiver show, which is available on the channel. You could check that out. But which one of the wide receivers has the biggest upside?
Jarrett, just because of the speed, playmaking ability, and he's not a small, skinny guy either. He's got some meat on his bones, so I just think you're going to be able to do a lot with him. I personally see like Jalen Reagor in him, which again, first round pick, but same thing, like just the skill set. It's not as developed. Demas has a better skill set. It just knows how to play the receiver position at a higher level. But Jarrett, I mean, he might run in the 4.3s, and considering the size and the fact that you can do a few different things with him, hand them the ball off, I think he can be a solid returner. He'll get drafted higher because of that.
The players that look like they're playing, though, your top guy is offensive tackle Jalen Duncan.
Yeah. Duncan, we talked about, I think he was near the top of everyone's offensive tackle stack heading into the year, but he struggled all season in pass protection, and to the point where I'm even thinking I'm going to take him off the tackle board and put him inside. Now, there's technique issues with him, but you also there's a reach issue. The length that he has is below average for tackle. And then you see him struggle in pass protection. And then you see some of the positive traits in his game, I think could be hidden inside. So that's another reason why I think he could still be a mid-round draft pick, but guard might be his destination unless someone wants to draft him and put him on the bench for an entire year. You're not going to be able to stash him on the practice squad. Somebody would scoop him up. But he allowed 7 sacks this year. And it's way too many for a guy that you think could be a starting player early on in his career. He's going to have to sit for a year. Whether he plays guard or tackle is going to be highly dependent on who drafts.
All right, now Bennett, safety, Ja'Cory Bennett, he's next on your list. What do you think about Bennett? Probably one of the better defenders for Maryland this season, because they didn't have success this season because of their defense.
Yeah, keep an eye on this kid. If he's got some of the best athletic traits in the class at this cornerback safety group, and if he does really well, you see it every year that if you run a fast 40, as silly as it sounds, and you play and you have some cornerback experience and you have some versatility, it's going to boost him up. So just keep an eye on this kid as it comes up. But I hope he plays in the game. Just has a really good feel for coverage, good ball skills, knows how to make plays on the ball, has some like wide receiver type ball tracking to him, which I love. He's made a good amount of plays throughout his career. He was on the Bruce Feldman freak list. So the athleticism is going to keep on popping up in the process for him. And that's usually a good sign for a defensive back.
North Carolina State, Devin Leary is going to be now a Kentucky Wildcat. So good get for Kentucky. I after the season, I was questioning whether Will Levis was ever going to be a first round draft pick. And then after watching him this season, and I know a lot of it's not just me. It's like everybody's ganging up on him now. So I don't think there's any chance. But, hey, you never know. Once we get through the process, it just takes one GM to fall in love with him. So it could happen. But Devin Leary to Kentucky, so good get. Because he definitely needed to come back again. This is not a good year for Devin Leary.
Yeah, the injury. If he had if he had those handful of games at the end of the year, that not from not getting hurt and played really well, then you could talk about him coming out. But the injury kind of just put the nail in the coffin for him. Smart decision for him to go back to school.
Now let's talk about. There's 2 really impact players to talk about here at linebacker.
Yep.
You have Drake Thomas, who could go as high as the 6th round. You have Peyton Wilson, who may not even get drafted, and that's got to be just all injury related. because Peyton Wilson
Peyton's a
is a
stud.
very good impact player, but he just can't stay healthy.
He's a stud. He's a stud, but he can't stay healthy at probably the most violent position in football. So you hate to see it, trust me. And whenever I put an undrafted grade on a kid that I just truly appreciate watching play football, and then you read about him, and great kid, but it's life isn't fair sometimes, and I just don't think I think maybe somebody scoops him up at the end of the draft, and you try to put him on your special teams, because I think whoever gets him in camp is going to love him being around. And if he does stay healthy, right, that's a big
maybe
if.
you limit his snaps at the next level.
Right. Or you just change up the role. You take him away from as much contact, or, hey, maybe a lot of his injuries. I mean, this is where we just don't have the access to information on his injuries, but it could have been some bad luck. That is a part of getting hurt, and staying healthy is luck, right? And if he does stay in the field, the kid's a pro caliber linebacker and probably the best one of the bunch.
But Drake Thomas, he is going to have a better opportunity because he has stayed healthy.
Yes, and he had a really good year. I thought that he was on tape this season alone was probably their best defender, and he did recently declare, but he did say he's playing in the game. Kudos to him. NFL size is not there. He's 5'11", 220, 30-inch arms. Like, immediately that'll send some coaches into shivers. But at the very least, this kid's going to be a stud special teamer, and you feel good about drafting these kids late in the draft because, again, we've talked about this, right? The last couple of rounds are very much about special teams. And every year you see, you have to keep this in the front of your memory when you're watching the draft, that, you see every year you have a list of guys that goes undrafted, and you're thinking, man, how did this guy go undrafted, but this guy got drafted? Special teams is almost always the answer, or some sort of unknown medical reason. So I feel very safe with Drake Thomas getting drafted. Just need to see a little bit more power out of his game. We're going to talk about a linebacker in the coming months, Pace from Cincinnati, who I overlooked in that bowl game, but that kid is powerful as any linebacker in the class. Reminds me and John Cooper a lot of Malcolm Rodriguez, the 6th-round rookie from Detroit that's having a really good year. But Drake Thomas, he doesn't have that power trait. So what are you? You're short and you can't get off blocks in traffic. That's an issue, and he's not going to be a factor in coverage. So you start crossing things off the list. And you're saying, what can this kid really provide for us? And it's going to be hard for him. But knowing some things about him personally, I think he's going to work his ass off to the point where he'll probably get on the field at some point.
Is there a player or two that so far in the games that you've seen, the bowl games, that you've said to yourself, wow, I think I might need to elevate this guy's stocks a lot more?
When Pace was just an overlook. We have Pace high up on our linebacker, but you're going to see in the coming months when we do a linebacker report, we're higher on him than most of what I see out there. I think he's a top 50 player. So that was just an overlook. It wasn't, he came out of nowhere. But off the top of my head, I haven't seen anyone, because we're going pretty deep on these guys that for these reports that no one's really jumped off the radar that said, like, oh man, I wish I had him higher at this point. Not yet.
All right. By the way, Isaiah Moore is another linebacker who could get drafted in the later rounds. Just shows you what a great job Dave Doran has done recruiting it. Especially on the defensive side of the ball. What an excellent recruiter he's been for the past 8 years or so, and NFL talent. Talk about Moore.
Just probably out of these 3 linebackers, again, probably the most athletic. Just straight line speed is there. He's 240 pounds too. Like, this is the NFL body that you're talking about. ACL injury in 2021. He's been nicked up a few other times in the career. Again, it's almost like you're talking Peyton Wilson again. Maybe not as extreme, but just the injuries have really hindered him from really reaching that ceiling. So you just don't know what he could be yet. But you might want to gamble on this size and speed even more before Drake Thomas for that reason. If you're a height, weight, speeds guy, and I'm not, but most are, I would even say, Moore's probably going to finish above Thomas on that linebacker stack.
All right, and then one last player, and that's the receiver, Thayer Thomas. Been very consistent for the last several years. Maybe not eye-opening. It doesn't like pop off the screen like, wow, I got to have this guy. But another guy who can play the slot, can give you the return game. That's always going to be, we just talked about special teams. That includes the return game. Yep. So Thayer Thomas, he's the guy who, again, you look in the later rounds to fit one of those roles?
Yeah, definitely. I think he's going to be an NFL punt returner. That's going to be the very least. And I think he's got some sneaky slot receiver potential. You said it perfect. Nothing jumps off the radar with him physically and athletically, but he gets the job done. And he's great in contested situations. I've seen him make so many plays with defenders on top of him or coming down on him. And you have to have a few screw loose to be a receiver going over the middle now as a slot, even though they're trying to protect the game now with the helmet-to-helmet hits, all that. This kid's as tough as they come. And that's going to mean something. Again, special teams, day 3.
All right, Sun Bowl, Pitt and UCLA. And unfortunately, Pitt has a bunch of key players who have opted out. Now, this is just, you would think that they had a coaching change, and that's like anything but. I mean, they have stability there, so I just don't know what this is all about, but it is what it is.
Groupthink.
Even Slovis, the quarterback, is transferring.
Yeah.
That didn't work out. So,
yeah, again, I think the nail's in the coffin for him. I don't know where he's going to go, but couldn't get it done here.
How about what's his name who went to Rice? Who was that Georgia quarterback? The former that big recruit USC Georgia. What's his name? Who was the guy who went from USC to Georgia and then got beat out by Stetson Bennett? What the hell was his name? JT Daniels.
Yeah, JT. Oh no, West Virginia.
Yes. So he goes to USC, Georgia, West Virginia. Now he's going to Rice.
Yeah,
I think that's great for Rice.
It's great for him. He gets to play football, but I think the writing's on the wall that he's just not going to be an NFL quarterback. So why just keep prolonging the career as best you can? But he's not. He won't be a pro guy. He was on our list. Someone sent us a scouting list part of the year, and I watched him a few times. It's not an NFL quarterback.
Just crazy though. It shows you had the big recruit JT Daniels supposed to, and then Stetson Bennett wins the job, and it's like, who's this little dude taking the job and winning the national championship? But anyway, Slovis, another guy that looked like he had it, and he even played well a few games for USC.
He did.
Oh yeah, this guy. Maybe he still has time. I don't know. He's got to get to the right spot. But again, pitch just wasn't it. But their top player on the board here is the defensive, the edge rusher that should play as far as because all those other guys you see on the ticker there when it gets around to Pittsburgh are not playing. But Baldonado is your top guy who's going to the Shrine.
Yeah. 7th round free agency type grade, had 11 sacks in 2021. That immediately puts you on the radar. Responds with 2 sacks in 22. I guess there's more to his game than sacks, I know. But those are numbers that you got to be aware of. It wasn't like he was getting a lot of attention. I thought he was the 3rd best lineman on that team this year, and a lot of one-on-one looks, and he just couldn't beat guys. Hustler, attitude, plays pretty well, right? But when you're looking at bend traits, power traits, explosion traits, they're all below average. So kind of just confused on where you see the upside with him. The Shrine will probably be his last shot to show that he should be a draft pick. If he shows more of what we saw on tape in 22, he'll likely be shifted towards that free agency tier.
Now, just the running back who's not going to play, Abanikanda. So he pretty much, he had a decent season last season. It was okay, but it wasn't 900,000 yards. So, a bunch of those guys in college football. But he just really broke out this year and had these monster games. What do you see his stock at the next level?
It's funny. I didn't see anything on tape. I think all but 2 of his games he rushed for over 100 yards. He had 20 touchdowns, right? I didn't see a standout trait to the game. And and I don't love the lower half, just aesthetically with how thick he is, right? I think he's a little too top heavy for a running back. And I don't see like the long speed. Again, I kind of want to do a deeper dive on him.
Oh, yeah, we'll have time for that.
Radar. Yeah, I started looking at him in, I think, early November because by that time, the production, he had that 300-yard game against Virginia Tech, and that's when people start talking about him, and you're saying, all right, let me give him a look. And I just didn't see a standout trait. I saw the Virginia and Miami game, and I think in those games combined, he's, had an average, I think, 5 to 6 yards per carry, a couple touchdowns. Does he bring much to the passing game? He had 12 catches this year, right? I'm trying to find something that would cause him to say, hey, I'm bolting from this program. Other than the fact that he plays running back, right? You just don't want to take too many years. Not everyone's going to be a Mo Ibrahim where you just stay in college for 5 years and take 40 carries a game, But But yeah, I like just didn't see a lot of standout traits of the game. You see the standout production, which is
Oh, yeah, it's
gives you a
very
second
impressive.
look.
100, 100, and then 300. Yeah,
Right,
it's impressive.
right.
Yeah.
It just that's my last thought on him. I just
So
didn't see the standout trait.
middle round, late round kind of deal. Nothing special.
Yeah, I would say right now I would say he was a 5 or 6.
And again, we're going to have more than enough time to change our rankings at running back. And that's where we're going to lead off for UCLA because Zach Charbonneau, you have him potentially going second, third round. And
Love him.
we don't know if he's going to play in a game. But, I mean, to me, when I watch Zach Charbonneau, I just think you're looking at like the prototypical NFL running back. Like if you had a chisel, the perfect NFL that just does, or size wise and everything he does, he may not be elite at one thing, but he's very good at a lot of things. And there's something about him that says, all right, worst case scenario, he's going to have a long career in the NFL, and he'll do well, and he'll have maybe some Pro Bowls. But there's also another part of me that says, is there something special about him? Is there,
Right.
does he have that in him?
Right. The special, and I hate saying this because I'm probably going to get knocked for it, but his running style, the size, I see Adrian Peterson not on the same level. So that is special, probably top 5 running back anyone's ever scouted, right? I mean, you take all the opinions, Adrian Peterson's top 5 ever. He's not going to be in that tier. But the play style, the size, the versatility within the position that he plays, that's the kind of player that I think you're getting, not the caliber. All right, so don't confuse the two. But that's what I see, and I think I agree with you, and we're probably speaking the same language here, is that he just does everything well. And he doesn't have a specialty. He breaks a ton of tackles. His footwork is precise. He does. I mean, I remember reading about how Shanahan used to coach his running backs, and he used to get mad at them for not hitting the correct blade of grass on the outside zone scheme, right? This is what this kid does. He gets to exactly where he needs to be every single time he gets the ball. Every time he doesn't get the ball, he's always in the right spot. And I just love these backs that he's gonna, no matter what role you put him into, he's gonna get the job done. And sometimes in the NFL now, with all these different packages, and you can almost forecast what a team's going to do based on the personnel that's out there, because a lot of players now are specialists, especially in the backfield. This kid is anything but. He can be your pass catcher, he can be your power guy, he can be your every down guy, he can be your blocker. So I think there's just going to be a lot of value in him. I'll tell you this right now. I'm in charge of the running backs stacks for our lads this year, and I'm going to have him higher than I think anyone else will have him.
Good.
And that's, so we're speaking the same language on this kid. I think he's going to be a stud.
Yeah, he could be, to me, he could kind of be like, to a team, what like if you want to emulate what the Browns have done with Chubb,
right,
and Hunt, I think that's go get Charbonneau, maybe get somebody else, and run the hell out of the ball. Just be a run-first offense if you want to be. But that's because I think that's a kid that should get 15 to 20 rushing attempts every game.
Agreed. And again, it always gets overlooked. He's an elite ball catcher.
Yes.
Elite hands. And there's just so many reasons why. I mean, I could talk myself into putting a first-round grade on him. I won't. But
if you keep talking to me, you might.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, there are a couple other guys. Well, look, the biggest name is Bobo, the receiver, the Duke transfer, who had a nice season this season because they needed it. They lost a couple of key guys last season, and Bobo came up and became like their top weapon. Yeah,
6'4", 210. He'll stay at receiver, but he's got like that Ricky Seals-Jones type feel to him. When I watch him play, he might not test well athletically. So do you want to put a multi-year project on him and make him a receiving tight end? Yeah, try to bulk him up a little bit. He's got the frame, and I think he's got the attitude for it too. But no matter where he plays, he's going to be a possession guy at the next level that can win a lot of contested situations.
And then Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he gets drafted in the 7th round. I don't know. There's just something about I just think he's more of a, college system guy. He disappointed me so much this year, like in big games, at big spots when he needed to make the throw. It's just he was very erratic. And look, I think he had a tremendous career where he started. Chip Kelly gave him the keys to the engine as a freshman, and he was awful this first year or two.
Yeah.
And he got so much better as a college quarterback. But come on, I mean, we're talking the NFL here.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I said the same thing about Trace McSorley out of Penn State, and I think McSorley had a better career, college career than Thompson Robinson. But just said like, hey, this kid's not going to be. He's not going to be in the NFL. It's too small. Came up too small. Like that USC game was going to be Robinson's like his one shot to like really rise above and throw 3 interceptions, right?
That's again, a bad some defense.
Of his mantra, yes, and some the attitude in him I don't love either. In today's NFL, I think that his value is higher than it was even 5-6 years ago.
That's true. It is true. Yeah.
I think the running value is good enough to get him drafted, but by no means am I going to say he's going to get drafted. I think it's going to be very situation dependent.
Maybe he gets drafted by Arizona or Baltimore.
Yes, exactly. Literally the 2 teams I was thinking about.
All right. And by the way, John Gaines is also in the mix to get drafted as high as the 5th round. He's their offensive guard.
Yeah, just a really powerful dude. Great with his hands, great bend, a lot of bad beats on tape, but a lot of quality tape as well.
All right, now let's go to the Notre Dame-South Carolina matchup. And this one is the Gator Bowl. Love the Gator Bowl. That's just old-time college football bowl action. But their 2 top players are not playing, so that's a bummer. Foskey and Mayer. Jared Patterson, though, is going to play, it looks like, and he's been all over the place. Center, guard. I mean, he plays just about anywhere, which is going to help him. That's what you want to see at the next level. What's his upside?
Probably, he's one of the 4 centers that I talked to. I'm going to keep him at center for my stacks leading up to the draft, but he's one of my 4 guys that I think could start at the next level. I very much prefer him at center over guard. I don't think he's going to be a quality enough quickness guy against pass protection as a guard. I wouldn't want to leave him on an island that often, but he's got a ton of experience, very intelligent, very stout, does reach his points as a center when you're trying to get to the 3 technique and pass protection. So I think he's athletic enough for that role. Teams that are very zone blocking happy, teams that really move their centers, the Eagles, for example, the Vikings. I don't think they're going to have a high enough grade on Patterson to even be drafted. So I think the grades are going to kind of be all over the place on him. I would like him as a guy that, hey, we're not going to be pulling our center out to space that much. We need a smart guy and a stout guy inside.
I mean, isn't it better if you're considered a 5th, 6th, 7th round guy and you have the ability to play center and guard? Isn't it better for your value to try and be a center?
For sure. I mean, you see it every year. Guys that play college guard, they'll work at center for teams leading up to the draft. In their pre-combine training, they'll work on snapping the ball, and it's a whole different game with your hands as a center. But yeah, the more you can do, the better. And the fact that he did play guard this year, it probably puts another feather in his cap.
By the way, out of the priority free agents you have, or free agents, the one that sticks out to me is Bertrand, the linebacker, because he had a good career at Notre Dame.
Yeah, good career from a run defense perspective. Okay. I know a lot of Notre Dame faithful that they're despise him in any sort of passing situation, and I think that's going to be his downfall at the next level. He won a lot of battles in college based on power and pop. Was able to hit a blocker, get off him, and make the tackle. Always impressive to do that. I don't think it's going to be the case in the NFL. So you're once he starts playing against the men of the NFL and the coverage, I just don't see the ability to be there. So, back end roster, special teamer, maybe. All
right, South Carolina, and you look at them, not a lot in the game because of the fact that it's probably 4 of their top players will be opting out. Wide receivers out because of injury. So unfortunately, it just doesn't really, there's nothing to kind of look forward to with South Carolina. Gwynn, the offensive guard, is probably the only one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Gwynn I like watching him play. I think he might need to move to center, which I'm fine with. Again, that'll be something he'll probably be working on in the months leading up to the draft. Exactly what we just talked about. His entire career has been at right guard. I love the explosion that we talked about earlier when we were talking about, some traits of the offensive guard position that you want. He gets off the ball exceptionally well and gets great movement initially. Does he stick to his blockers? Is he great with his hands? No. But again, you're talking about a late round pick, if anything, that could probably provide some interior versatility if he can learn to play center.
In the Arizona Bowl, really the only thing to talk about here between Ohio and Wyoming was the news that their running back, Sven, was kicked off the team. Now he's going to go to the draft. So I'm not sure what happened there.
Not either. He did go into the portal initially. He's an NFL back. I mean, a late round pick, but he's definitely an NFL caliber back. And I'm not sure what happened, but after I think he went through the portal process a little bit, I think he just said, screw it, I'm going to the league. And, he's going to have some questions to answer. You get kicked off a team, that's going to be a red flag. Some teams care about that more than others, but you start putting some negative marks like that on your grading sheet, and you're a late round pick initially, and you play a pretty.
You're not going to get drafted,
right? Especially at running back, right? I mean, there's so many of them at that point that he'll probably be one of the free agents that someone might take a chance on.
Yeah, and it's too bad for Wyoming because they've had such a good season. Nobody expected them to be in a bowl. Had a chance to play in the championship game. Even could have beat Boise. And Craig Ball's just done such a fantastic job at Wyoming, underrated head coach, and Sven was their whole offense. And that's sad to see, but they got a couple of young running backs, so we'll see. You got to pick up. Look, they're going to be next year's running backs anyway, so maybe one of them can get off to a good start. Because I actually like him in this game against Ohio. I was surprised that even without Sven, Ohio doesn't have Rourke. The MAC Player of the Year's out at quarterback.
Yeah.
So I think Wyoming's better than that. We'll see, but no Sven. The Orange Bowl is Clemson and Tennessee, and this could be the best one out of all the games that we're talking about. It's also the last one, and then we pick things back up again on Friday. Miles Murphy's opting out, but everybody else looks like they're playing. Of course, no more Ungale. He has where did he go again? He went to where did he go?
Oregon State.
I think that's a good spot.
Great fit.
Yes, Oregon State needs a quarterback. They don't need somebody that's elite. They just need an okay guy, and that's what he is. He's just okay.
I like him being out of the limelight next year too. Like I was really hoping he wouldn't go to, Florida or Florida State. Like I don't want him in a national spotlight. I think that's where you're going to find out if he can turn this around or not.
But you do get players coming back. Brzee is maybe the top player we're talking about in this whole show.
For sure.
He had some injury issues last year. So has he done enough this season for you to say, yep, don't care about that? He's back to being the player that we all thought he was going to be. And by time he becomes a rookie, he's going to be ready to tear up the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way to put it. Didn't love his tape early on, actually, but I thought he got a little bit better as the year went on. Still fought. It looked like he was still fighting a few injury issues throughout the year. So I get medicals are going to be – I know he dealt with some personal issues as well. So, again, you always want to take that into consideration. I'm not going to pretend to know the details there or how much it impacted him, but that's where – the whole pre-draft interview process with teams and visits and relationship building with coaches, that's where I think it's going to be a huge deal for him. This was a 5-star recruit that started right away there. And this was at the peak of Clemson football back when Lawrence was still there. ACC Rookie of the Year in 2020. Unfortunately, toward the ACL at the beginning of 2021. So you didn't see a ton of tape in 2021 either. But, he's a 4.7 caliber speed guy at 300 pounds with pass rush skill sets that are pretty well developed. Like that's just going to make some coaches salivate over the potential and ceiling of what he brings to the table.
So he could actually end up statistically a better NFL player than college football player.
I would put money on it that he will be a better statistical player in the NFL than he is. Just where's the fit for him is my one question. Almost everyone I talk to says top 15 pick lock. I'm not there yet. I'm more back half of round one because I'm not exactly – I don't think he's quick or explosive enough to be a 3-tech because a lot of these quality 3-techs in the NFL, they play low to the ground, they gain the leverage advantage, and they're explosive out of their stance. Brzee has good build-up speed, but I don't know if I've seen enough explosion yet. And it might still be he's recovering from the ACL. I mean, that does take, for big guys like that, that could be a year plus before you're back to normal. So again, you have to consider that. I don't want to go back to his 2020 tape to get a feel for it. It's just too long ago. But I think his best role might be a 3-4 D end.
Really?
And teams that really value this body type and skill set out of a 3-4 D end is Pittsburgh. And I think Pittsburgh's going to have a spot there to fill this year or next. So just keep an eye on that relationship. Pittsburgh telegraphs who they're going to pick, in my opinion. Maybe with management changing, it'll be a little bit different. They have someone new running the draft this year, but that's a spot where I could see him bulking up to 310 and playing that Cam Hayward type role down the road.
Okay, so even with his athletic ability, because to me, it just sounds like if you're going to play that role, you're not taking advantage as much in that athletic ability as you could.
It depends, because I think some 3-4 teams, they do treat their defensive end in certain looks like
That's
a 4-3 outside, like a pass rusher. And I think he's pretty stout against the run. Again, I don't love the pad level. That's what I'm concerned with. You know, a guy with a bad knee that already struggles to play low is a little concerning to me. But in terms of a 3-4 D end is not, just what Bill Belichick gets out of those guys. Like they do rush the passer. I mean, look what Hayward has done at Pittsburgh. He's a big time force, and they lost their other D end, Stephon Tuitt to an early retirement.
They got to get a lot younger up front. Yeah.
Right, and that was the role. I think he had a year with 10 sacks, if I remember correctly. I think that's the role that you see the kid slipping into.
Makes sense. Okay, and then a bunch of players in the middle rounds, including on offense. You have Jordan McFadden at tackle and Davis Allen, the tight end. Now, Davis Allen, we talked about him on the tight end show. It seems like the good spot for him, right where you have him, third, fourth round. McFadden, he's interesting because there have been some people who thought a year or two ago he could have been a first-round draft pick. But I've also wondered whether or not we just talked about Oklahoma receivers, Clemson offensive linemen. They don't seem to take it to the next level.
That's a good point.
I'm not saying McFadden won't, but maybe he's good. Maybe he's one of the good ones. But tell me about those two guys.
That's a good point. It's fair. It's a fair argument as well. I like McFadden a lot, and he's going to be a really interesting guy to follow in the coming months because I have him in my guard stack. He's been a tackle his entire career, and I think I'm being swayed by the guys that have taught me about scouting and really put me into their under their wing. He's not tall enough for tackle, and I think he's going to measure in 6'2", 6'3". And to me, I've always said, why does that matter? Like he's long enough, right? He's got 34-inch arms. His feet are athletic enough. He can reach the edge, and I like how he looks on tape. And it's going to be, I think his situation might be dependent on who drafts him. I don't think he's automatically going to be thrown into the tackle tier or the guard tier. I think it's going to be depending on who drafts him. But when I watch this kid block, he gets the job done. And I love him in space. I think he's such a comfortable player in space. That's one thing that the more I get into this, the more I consider it almost a prerequisite to play tackle is the body control needs to be elite for me to say, hey, you're an automatic tackle. And he has that. He moves at a high rate of speed, and he's almost never off balance. I see a lot of quality prospects that come into the NFL. They dominated college football because they were bigger and stronger than everyone, but they don't have enough balance. They don't have enough body control. You will get eaten alive in the NFL if you can't stay square to your man. And McFadden, I think that's the trait that stands out to me. He stays square to the guys that he's matched up against.
Let's hope we get to see Byron Young go up against McFadden.
Yeah, that would be Young. I will say this. Young often lines up on the left side of the defense, and McFadden is the left tackle for the offense. So they're usually on the opposite sides, but you will see them go head-to-head at least a few times because they do move Young around.
Yeah, it's a bowl game. They should go ahead and do it. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's have some fun.
for our sake.
Davis Allen, again, nothing special about Davis Allen, but a player that could have a long career in the NFL as a good number 2.
Yep. Yeah, just good at everything. No athletic traits that stand out. Clemson coaches say it's the best blocker they've ever had at tight end, and he has a career drop rate of 3.4%. 6%, 7% is considered average. He's half of that. So and he's had his best receiving year of his career this season. Reminds me a little bit of Jeremy Rucker from Ohio State that the Jets drafted. That he's been kind of put into a redshirt role this year with the Jets. Has a similar feel to his game.
One more player on offense, Joseph Nada at wide receiver, may get drafted late. I don't know. I mean, to me, it's like he's just all prospect. Like he's all size, speed, but get him on the field, and he's going to need work.
Yep, day 3 development type guy.
All right, defensively, Tyler Davis in the middle, KJ Henry at the edge, and you also have this is Luke Orororo. And
that's
so Orororo and Davis in the middle. You have Davis getting maybe drafted a round or 2 higher. And as I said, KJ Henry on the edge, who hasn't really, Henry's been kind of quiet, to tell you the truth. He hasn't really been one of these Clemson prospects that we've heard their name a lot.
Yeah, I feel like Henry gets the shaft because of the star power that they had on that defensive line. You can only spend so much time talking about one team's defensive line. And, Henry, he's got great get off. He's got, 50 pressures this year. That doubled his career prior to this point. He also saw an uptick in playing time, but I like that he responded in this way. Great bend. Size might not be there right away, but he's 6'5", 250, has the frame to add some more weight. I believe he got a Senior Bowl invite. That could be his coming out party. We'll see. The 2 D linemen, the 2 D tackles, they're going to go near each other. I like Davis more just because he has 2 separate years of really good pass rush production. 8 sacks as a freshman in 2019, 6 sacks in 2022. He's had a few injury issues in between. Reminds me of a poor man's version of Ed Oliver, current Bills D tackle. Just a little undersized from a reach perspective, but he gets off the ball really well and he knows what to do with his hands. Rook is more of a pro body, pro style D tackle, really heavy hands. He's really inconsistent. I've seen flashes of his game that look like a day 2 pick, then I see flashes in the same game that look like an undrafted free agency. I'm not sure what's going on there. If it's a conditioning issue, if it's a concentration issue, or just needs to get more playing time. It's one thing about the Clemson D line. They rotate their guys so much that you can make the argument he's just not getting the development that he needs.
Yeah, and we'll be talking a lot next year about Will Shipley at running back. Let's see. Oh, what's up with Xavier Thomas?
He started to play, then I think he got hurt again.
Yeah, he's hurt. I don't know if he's still hurt, but I think so. Because you don't have him on the list here.
He's. I don't know if he played weeks 6, 7, and 8. He played 52 snaps combined, and he did have 2 sacks in those games. I think that he is going to get another season of eligibility because of the small amount that he played.
So you think he's coming back?
I do think he's coming back, or going to the portal.
And then you have 3 other sophomores: Trenton Simpson, Jeremiah Trotter, a linebacker, and Nate Wiggins in the backfield to keep an eye on. So, and and also Cade Klubnik is the quarterback who is now taking over for DJ. That's why you throw around these stars all the time, and maybe we're thinking that we're going to see Trevor Lawrence every time at Clemson, but he looks like he's got some work to do. Klubnik.
He does. I think Clemson might be one of these teams that might be reaching their hand into the transfer portal for a quarterback. So that's something to keep an eye on. You hear
Grayson
these rumors,
McCall.
Right? Grayson McCall. You hear these rumors that people are offering Drake May $5 million a year to play for their program.
Oh my goodness gracious!
If Clemson is one of them.
All right, we'll finish with Tennessee, and their top 2 wide receivers are opting out. So there's that. The quarterback, of course. Hendon Hooker, injury. I don't think we had really a chance to talk about it. How does that impact his draft status?
I don't think he's going to be ready for the start of the season. He's going to be 25 years old already, and he didn't end the season as hot as he started the
Georgia
season.
game hurt
so
him.
This is why. Yes.
Second round now?
This is why I think second round. I'm even going to say I'm going to leave it at day 2.
Okay.
I think he could slip into the third because of the injury situation. Was he special enough that someone's going to draft him and wait till 2024 to really put him on the field as a 26-year-old rookie? You're approaching Brandon Whedon territory at that point when it comes to the age in your rookie season. I loved how he started the year. I really did. I thought he played really good football. I just wrote my report on him for our guide. It's already done. And there are some deep dives that I did that didn't like a few things about his game. With his release, again, things that can be fixed, and some quarterbacks do fix it in the NFL. Let's not pretend that doesn't happen. But again, the injury, it was a major blow to him. It really was.
Maybe that's something where, if they don't go after Lamar, of course, but maybe that would work out for the Falcons. Because you give Ritter a little bit more time, and you draft Hooker in the second round, so you don't have to invest in a first rounder.
What do you think about the Jets? You give Wilson another shot. You have Hooker in the wings.
Not bad. Not a bad idea.
No.
Yeah, could happen.
Do you want to use a day 2 resource on another quarterback? That's the question.
That would be the Jets, whether or not
how
confident they are. Like I said, I don't think. I'd just be shocked if. By the way, if LaFleur does come back and they don't get a quarterback guru, you know what? If you're looking at one team that would make the perfect sense, if Aaron Rodgers left.
I've thrown that idea to a couple people. Financially, it doesn't make sense for Green Bay, but it just seems like it's natural for it to happen, right?
Same system,
like Green Bay. Yep.
Brothers, of course. So it's perfect system, brothers, and he's got the team. He's got the Jets are a Super Bowl caliber team if they have an elite quarterback. So
right. That would be Joe Douglas saying, "Hey, I'm going to put all my career with the Jets on the line on his shoulders."
And look, Zach Wilson already has this relationship with Aaron. Right. I think that would be perfect. You give him a year, maybe even 2. Learn under Aaron.
Yeah, I would say 2. I think Rodgers has 2 years left,
and then hopefully by then, Zach Wilson's ready. You're giving him 4 years.
That would be, As a New York guy, that would be a blast to watch and just be a part of.
So I don't know. Again, I don't know if he's leaving Green Bay. I just said if he does leave, I can't think of a better spot for him.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
Otherwise, I think they need to go out and get a better coordinator. All right. So Byron Young, we just talked about him. He's the best player, hopefully, that we'll see on the field. Because even though Hyatt and Tillman are not playing, I still kind of like Tennessee in this game. And I'm glad Byron Young is playing. And I'm also glad a few of the other guys are playing. But Byron Young, what's his ceiling?
His ceiling in the NFL, maybe Harold Landry.
Okay, that's
maybe
not bad.
A slow, a 10-sack kind of guy. I think that's the ceiling. You get him around 3-4, you have to consider that a win. He's 6'2", 249 with good length, great explosion. I like his get off and the aggression plus power that comes out of his get off. With most of the pass rushers in this class, maybe not the top guys, but that second tier pass rushers, I think he's got that combination of power and get off that is going to be really attractive to these 3-4 fronts. Got a really cool story. JUCO in 2019, he worked at a dollar store for 18 months during the whole COVID period.
You mean he didn't go to
joined
school?
Tennessee. Right. And he joined Tennessee in January 2021 and immediately became one of their forces up front in the SEC, right?
Where was he?
Again, another old...
Oh, so even before JUCO, he wasn't in FBS? Wow.
No, he was not. No. Yeah, that's where he started off. He started off at JUCO, I believe, and then got away from college for 18 months working at a dollar store. So, again, another older than normal rookie. I think, again, going to keep saying this over and over in the next few months. We'll get sick of hearing it. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. I believe he was a Senior Bowl invite as well, so that'll be a huge week for him. And, again, like you said, I hope we get to see him up against McFadden a few times.
Alabama's Byron Young is a better prospect?
Good question. I think so. I think they're both going to be in the same tier, right? Round 3, round 4. I think the Alabama version is going to be more round 2, round 3.
And then Darnell Wright at offensive tackle. You have him as high as the 3rd round.
Yeah, I think he had a great year. a great year. He had a great tape against Will Anderson from Alabama. That tape right there. I've always said this, right, where those tape against the best players, their best competition,
Yes.
and they rise to the occasion. That means a lot to me. I think that you can forecast that to the NFL. And, just dominant flashes. Some are saying day 2, some are saying year 1 starter. When I say year 1 starter, that's round 2, 3 to me, and don't forget, this kid was a 5-star recruit. I don't want to get too into high school recruiting, but this kid's always had
that's a good point.
the talent. He's always had the talent. He was a late bloomer, and the quickness in his feet in combination with the size, he's probably going to be one of the 3 or 4 biggest linemen in the class. He's your old school, typical right tackle. That I think you set it and forget it.
Be a nice sleeper pick. Yep. Okay, and then Trayvon Flowers, also a draftable player out in the defensive backfield.
Yep, could have been a pro baseball player. We like players, athletes especially, that have multiple sport backgrounds because, again, you're looking at traits. Yep. You're not just looking at playing the game of football. You're looking at athletic traits. And he could be in the MLB right now if he stuck with it. Only played 1 year of high school football, fell in love with the game fell in love with him. Had injuries early in the career, so he got off to a slow start. So, again, off the radar up until a year or 2 ago. 4 interceptions, box safety, but he can cover. He's not a box safety that like Jabril Peppers where you get afraid of him in coverage. The dude can cover man and zone. So just like everything that he can do, and I still think there's a lot of ground to be made up for considering how early he is to the game.
All right, so that is going to wrap up our second to last bowl report. Our final report is on Friday, and that is going to include, probably lead off with, the Sugar Bowl, because that's on New Year's Eve, Alabama, Kansas State, and then, of course, you got the playoff games. By the way, that's the game that we were talking about. That's the kickoff of the Saturday games, and then you got – so that's a really nice appetizer.
Hell yeah, that's games. A great day. That's a good way of putting it.
And then you've got the other games of consequence, including the Cotton Bowl and the Rose Bowl. Didn't mention the Citrus Bowl because, unfortunately, the whole Purdue, Jeff Brom leaving has kind of screwed that game up. And then the Reliant Quest Bowl is also, unfortunately, all about their head coach passing away, which is just really sad. Nobody expected it. We'll see how they play for their coach. But anyway, we'll go over those games on Friday, and then we'll turn our attention back to our position reports. We did our offense. That's all available on the channel. Broke it down by quarterback, running back, also other positions. But defense, we're going to have 2 shows the second week of January on Tuesday the 10th, Friday the 13th. So in just 2 shows, we're going to go over all the defense. And then we'll start doing team early team needs for the draft. We'll start with the teams that didn't make the playoffs. And then while we do that and finish the team needs, that'll go right into our very first mock draft report. So can't wait for that to get started. That should be late January, probably, when we do our first mock draft report. We should have a handful of those between now and the week of the draft. Where is the draft this year?
Yeah. I don't know.
Is it out west?
I'm going to be watching from my couch. That's what
probably
I know.
Out west. I think it's been in the East Coast the last few years. Has it? Was it? Where was it last year? Was it in Philly last year or Dallas?
Tennessee, I think.
Tennessee.
Oh no, that was a couple. Was it? Or was that a couple years ago?
Yeah, I know they go by so quick.
Yeah, this year it says Kansas City.
Oh, okay, Kansas City. All right.
Right in the middle.
All right, so there you go. So looking for. By the way, do you have a feeling about the playoffs?
In terms of who's going to rise above?
Who's playing who?
I believe on the NFC.
No, college.
Are you saying who? Oh, I thought you were talking about the NFL. I was
too early for that. College.
I think Michigan takes TCU pretty easy. I think 10 plus points. I think it's going to be a more than a 1-score game, and it's going to come down to Michigan and Georgia. And I hate to be the front runner, but I just don't see anyone playing with Georgia. They are beatable, though. I thought last year they were not beatable. Yeah. I didn't think last year they were beatable. This year, I do think that they can be. They just don't have the horses on offense And the defensive side, they lost all that talent to the NFL. And yes, they do restock, but it's not near what they had last year. And on all levels, D-line, linebacker, defensive backfield. So I think it's going to be Michigan, Georgia in the championship game. And that will be a fun game to watch, but I think Georgia takes it.
I think Michigan, the only way I'll believe that Michigan will be able to beat Georgia if they play Georgia is if they, like you said, handle TCU game over no later than early fourth quarter. If they handle TCU in that regard and they show me something like, yeah, this is a different playoff team from last year and we're all about national championship, and I'll have faith that they can get it done, because yes, Georgia is beatable. I just don't know if Ohio State, I know they have the talent, I just don't know up here. I don't know if Ohio State is psychologically prepared to beat a team like Georgia.
And it just starts with C.J. Stroud. You know, the one issue a lot of us have with him as a pro quarterback is this kind of game right here. And, you know, we've watched him play enough college football here that if you don't know by now, he probably doesn't have it. But one good game can really, you know, make us return to the tape and see if we can find some other traits that we really like in terms of him being a top flight quarterback. But I agree with you. Stroud sets the tone for that sentiment that you just don't know if they have it between the years to beat a team like
Georgia. He was upset about, look, it's on me. They're going to talk about me not being able to beat Michigan. He has his chance now to, and not that Michigan's the next opponent, but hey, beat Georgia, and a lot of those memories could go away, especially because if you beat Georgia, you could play Michigan again. And so we'll see. That's important.
I agree. Stroud has as much opportunity as any player in the college playoffs to cement himself as
top two pick.
A top two pick. If he goes out, beats Georgia, beats Michigan, and plays well,
top two pick.
It's the debate. The debate's probably
then
over.
He's only one guy that's gonna get drafted ahead of him. So, and we'll be talking about all of those guys: Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, and more coming up on Friday's show. So, Dave, appreciate it. Can't wait for our next show, and then we got probably about 50 other shows between now and April. So. They're all going to be fun and entertaining, and I can't wait.
Thank you, Greg. I'll see you on Friday.